I'm Mary Loftus-Levine. I'm the Policy Director for the Connecticut Education Association, and I'm speaking on behalf of over 40,000 teachers who work in 162 cities and towns in Connecticut that we represent. We're here to ask you tonight, I hope you got our testimony. I know I wasn't on the list, so I'm hoping you have our packet, because we have a study that we've released to you. I don't know if you, just making sure you have it, if I'm going to refer to it. Thank you. No? Okay. We are asking you to defer the action on this bill until we can, and ask you to follow the lead of the governor, who obviously people have addressed that issue tonight. We couldn't agree more, and we look forward and hope that we are a part of working on this important issue. I think you've all heard enough about the ECS formula, and our position is that actually the current system and the current problems aren't really the direct result of the formula as it was designed, but because it's been inadequately funded, and that there have been obviously many allusions tonight to political considerations that have trumped fairness and equity and transparency in the formula. We don't think this bill will solve that problem, and in fact exploits it. The State Department of Education, operating in isolation with no oversight to set a pupil foundation, we don't find acceptable. We think that when you combine funding and choice and charters with the constitutional charge that we all have of instituting a funding formula that equalizes resources across municipalities, should be based upon their ability to pay. Now, one of the things that we're most concerned about in this bill is that we think that it proposes to really upend our present system, apparently based on some false premises that choice and charters in and of themselves will improve student achievement. Choice and charters, and we represent charter schools, represent a very suitable choice for many families. However, if you look at the studies that have come out recently, and we've quoted them, and I will get them to you and get you another packet if you don't have it, leave some question as to whether the lily is being gilded. We must not make drastic policy decisions based upon questionable results. We issued today, and again, I apologize that you didn't get it, that a new study, and it's right in line with the other studies that have been recently released. One out of Stanford, which says that 87% of U.S. charter schools provide no greater educational opportunity than traditional public schools, and that in fact 37% of charter schools actually deliver results that are worse than traditional neighborhood public schools. New York City, there's another study which is in our testimony that you can see. The study that we're talking about, which we have done by Ed Moskovich, in a nutshell, I can summarize. He says that Connecticut charter schools, he's analyzed across 12 different grades and in different subject matter based on the CMTs. Across all of those, that if you take them as a whole of all the charters, they neither outperform nor underperform comparable school districts. And if you look across these 12 areas and you look at grade level CMTs, the graphs that we have show that there are district schools, regular public school district schools, and often many, many, many district schools that do a much better job, particularly with low-income populations, than do the strongest charter schools. So we feel that based on that evidence that it's hardly the cause for redirecting needed funds from regular public schools to experimental schools of choice. In closing, the Connecticut Supreme Court has repeatedly reaffirmed the constitutional rights of all students to substantially equal educational opportunity. How can a bill that encourages money to leave already fiscally challenged districts to provide for all students in those districts the constitutional protection that they deserve? I hear envelopes opening. Good. Ray, do you want to add anything?
Okay. I'm Ray Rossamondo. I am a legislative coordinator for the Connecticut Education Association. The testimony that I'm speaking to is Mary's submitted testimony, but I did want to add just a couple considerations. Do we really want to change a system, that would require taxpayers in one town to essentially send tax dollars to another town? And that, I think, is a fundamental issue that this committee, Education Committee, the legislature would have to deal with if this were to move forward. Because what this bill does, it breaks down barriers of attendance between districts. So, for example, we don't know what the foundation amount would be. Alex Johnson just mentioned it might be $8,000. The current ECS formula was supposed to have it set at $9,687. We know that's not fully funded at the moment. And if you did the original ECS formula as it was crafted, we would set the foundation at the 80th percentile town, which right now I believe is somewhere in the area of $13,000. So we don't know what this foundation is. But what foundation you choose fundamentally changes who would be winners and losers under this proposal. And when I say winners or losers, what happens is that because whatever that foundation is, if it's $10,000, and in West Hartford, where your local share of education according to the ECS formula is 75%, well, that means that you're going to have to send $7,500 to any student that leaves West Hartford and goes to Farmington. And who makes up that difference? And I think that's a fundamental problem, because when you look at this bill, it's not a zero-sum game. There are winners and losers, and unless you find a lot of money to send to the towns that lose, then there's a question about, who will win, who will lose, and if you have money to actually keep others whole, which I think part of this bill proposes to be phased in over the years, then you could actually fund the ECS formula as it was designed to do. And when you let it do what it was designed to do, and you let the foundation rise like it's supposed to rise and keep pace with educational expenses, and you let the other levers in the formula work without the political considerations, it does what it's supposed to do, and that is provide equity and balance.
You mentioned the Stanford study, and I read that study when it came out, and it actually formed the basis for my opposition to Race to the Top, actually. But having said that, it doesn't directly address Connecticut, and in the study, in the conclusion part of the study, it talks about why we have the issues of looking at charter schools that we have, and why charter school. It also talks over the course of the study why charter schools could be effective if certain things actually happen. So those schools in the study that were effective, there were certain commonalities amongst them. And so I guess I asked that question to ask, recognizing you have two pieces of data you put before us, that and the Cape Ann economics piece. What is the point of having the Stanford study?
First, just briefly on the Stanford study, it looks at a significant number of charter school students, about 70% of those in the nation. So it's a significant study. And the reason why I want to bring these forward is to say, charter schools haven't been around for a long, long time. And for the most part, the data we've been looking at has been produced by the charter school advocates themselves. We're only now getting to the point where we have sophisticated measures, longitudinal data, and ability to look at data from a more impartial, independent way to determine what they've actually added in terms of growth of achievement, assuming that only scores are, the goals of education. We know it's more than that. Looking at what happened in Connecticut is partly because, quite frankly, our public schools, our teachers feel that they've been vilified by those who
I haven't gotten to Connecticut yet. I was just asking about the Stanford study.
Okay, and the significance to what the discussion here is that we believe that the proponents of money follows the child are essentially suggesting that the quality and the success of charter schools is the reason why we should jump ship off of the current plan and take this wholly untried, in my opinion, rather risky step towards their proposal. And I think it's a premise that is fundamentally not based in research.
And so I would say to you that, again, that formed the basis of my opposition to Race to the Top, because I did think that we didn't have all of the information at the time where we came up with the plan. Having said that, though, I believe that if we look at what were the positive attributes of charter schools, those are attributes of the charter schools in Connecticut. And I'm not trying to quibble with you on that, but onto this and the Cape Ann economics, I guess my question there is, I'm not sure, I recognize what the outcome was, but I'm not sure what even that really tells me, because one of the reasons we get the little red bubbles is because we don't look at all of the charter schools, right? Because there's a level of poverty you have to meet. And so I don't know if the information would be the same if we could look at all of the charter schools, or if it would shift. And I guess my question to you is, do you happen to know how this chart might change and how it might tell us something different? And I recognize that's maybe something different.
Yeah. If you look at page 1 of the actual report, I think it describes clearly why the study was done the way it was by the economist. He needed to compare apples to apples. And so, for example, the CMT results and student counts are unavailable if you have fewer than 20 students in a group. And then the overall results would be available for a school, for example, with a 4th grade of 21 students. But if only 18 of those students were low income, the number of low income students wouldn't be published. So we don't even have that kind of data. So I guess the answer is no. So what he is comparing, and what the point of the study is, which I think is summarized quite nicely at the end, is that a common argument in favor of charters is that they serve as beacons of good practice for district schools. And if that were the case, then we would expect to see, if we looked at these charts, a significant number of schools, charter schools, performing well above the trend. And in fact, that's not the case.
But I get that, but yeah, you don't have a significant number of charter schools that you're comparing.
We're comparing the schools that are, and this study is based on, the whole point of it is looking at high-performing, high-poverty schools. Many of the charter schools do not have the same numbers of low-poverty students as do, as you can see from this, our public schools. And so, therefore, they don't exist. Therefore, they wouldn't be counted in any of the studies.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm simply saying that you don't have you're talking about...
We're talking about low-poverty students. And if you look at the high-poverty, high-performing schools, the blue bubbles being the public schools, and you go to the 80th percentile and above, they just don't exist. The charter schools fall either into categories that aren't countable, or they're at a much higher level of wealth than the public schools, which we feel would be penalized by this legislation.
And I understand your point. I don't want to belabor the point. I'm simply saying that it is expected to me that you would get the outcome you have because you don't have the significant number that you were referring to even be a part of this. That's what I'm saying. There is no significant number of charter schools given the parameters that could be displayed on here. Thank you.
Representative O'Neill.
Yeah, I guess to Representative Holder-Winfield's point, I don't see anything in the Cape Ann study where there's an assertion that this is a statistically significant difference or number. Usually a research study would say something like that you either found or that there was or was not statistically significant, statistical significance to the numbers that are here. Is there something else that you haven't given us that where the researcher has said that these are statistically significant?
Yeah, the reason they are significant is because if there's under 20 students, he couldn't.
No, you're missing my point. The conclusion, I think what Representative Holder-Winfield was getting at, and which I'm trying to reframe it a little bit, is there a claim being made that the data that you've got enables the researcher to conclude that there is statistical significance to what's shown on these tables, on these